Hi students, and welcome to my discussion on the calculation of earnings per share, the most widely watched and popular of the ratios. The basic formula for earnings per share is to take net income and subtract from it dividends, preferred dividends, because preferred dividends relate to preferred shareholders, and this number is computed for common stockholders. We subtract preferred dividends if they are paid, if they are declared, and if it relates to preferred stock that is cumulative, we subtract it regardless of if it was declared because they're going to get it eventually. So the numerator is net income minus preferred dividends. The denominator is the weighted average number of shares of common stock outstanding. This is a more complicated number to calculate because you need to take into consideration any changes in stock that's outstanding during the entire period. It's probably best to look at examples to help you understand how that denominator works. Let's start with the first of 4. I have a very simple situation in my first example. Dividends or net income's $450,000. A declared dividend to preferred shareholders is $65,000, and the company has 90,000 shares of stock outstanding the whole year. What's earnings per share? It's a simple calculation in our first example. Net income of $450 minus preferred dividends is $65 divided by the 90,000 shares outstanding equals earnings per share of $4.28. Let's do a more complicated example now where the outstanding number of shares changes. In our second example, we have $450,000 of net income. A declared dividend is $65,000, and then common stock. At the beginning of the year, we have 90,000 shares outstanding, and there were 2 events that changed that during the period. On April 30th, 60,000 shares were issued, and October 31st, 36,000 shares of treasury stock were purchased. What's our earnings per share calculation? The numerator remains unchanged. Net income minus preferred dividends. Let's work on the denominator. We start the year with 90,000 shares, and it stays there until the end of April. So I'll take the 90,000 and times it by 4 for 4 months and divide it by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. 90,000 times 4 divided by 12 equals 30,000. Now we need to consider our common stock issue. We issued 60,000 shares. 90 plus 60 is 150, and we have that outstanding for 6 months for the period May 1st through the end of October. So our next layer is 150,000 times 6/12. 150,000 times 6 divided by 12 is 75,000. Then on October 31st, we purchased 36,000 shares of treasury stock, and we need to deduct that from our outstanding shares because it's no longer outstanding. 150,000 minus 36,000 is 114,000. 114,000 is outstanding for November and December, so we'll times that by 2/12. 114,000 times 2/12 is 19,000. Now we add up the 30,000, the 75,000, and the 19,000, and we see that our weighted average number of shares for the year is 124,000. And when you look at the array of data, 90 outstanding for some, 150 outstanding for the biggest chunk, pulling that average up, then 114 outstanding for a small period, pulling it down, 124,000 makes sense. Now you can take and finish the calculation. 450,000 minus 65,000 divided by 124,000. Earnings per share in this example equals $3.11 per share. Let's try another example where we change the denominator in yet other ways. In my third example, I have $450,000 of net income, and I have cumulative preferred stock outstanding, and it has dividends in arrears because they have neither been declared nor paid for the current year. That amount is $65,000. The beginning of the year, they had 90,000 shares outstanding, and three events changed it. Our common stock issue, our purchase of treasury stock, and on December 1st, we have something happen, a December 1st 2-for-1 stock split. What is earnings per share? Let's start. The numerator is 450,000 minus 65,000. It wouldn't matter how many dividends were in arrears for how many years, because every year we take off the dividends that accrued to that year, or 65,000. Let's tackle the number of shares outstanding now. Part of our computation hasn't changed. We still have 90,000 outstanding from the beginning of the year till April 30th. Then we issued 60,000, so it goes to 150, and that's the same through October 31st, so that's times 6/12. Then we have our treasury stock purchase, so we subtract 36,000, and that brings us down to 114. But here it changes a little, because that's only good for 1 month. It's good for November. But on December 1st, we did a 2-for-1 stock split. So right off the bat, for December 1st, we need to double the number of shares outstanding. December 1st, it goes from 114 to 228 as a result of the stock split. It doubles. In stock splits, no money is received by the organization. You don't issue any new stock. No money is spent by the organization. All that's happened is you've doubled the number of shares that are outstanding. Since no new money has been taken in, and net income is presumed because of that to be unchanged by this, we're going to back that up to the first of the period that we're presenting, in this case a year. So I need to make that 2-for-1 stock split effective as of January 1st in this case. I'm going to double whatever I get for the first layer of 90,000, and the second layer of 150, and the third layer of 114. I don't need to double my last layer, the 228,000, because I already did. 114 doubled is 228. Let's do the math. 90,000 times 4/12 times 2 is 60,000. 150,000 times 6/12 times 2 is 150,000. 114 times 1/12 doubled is 19. We don't need to double that, it already is, so 228 for 1 more month would still be 19. Add those last four numbers together, and you get a weighted average common outstanding stock for the period of 248. Go ahead and put this on pause and calculate my earnings per share now. 450,000 minus 65,000 divided by weighted average common shares of 248,000 is $1.55 per share. In this example, we saw the effect of a 2-for-1 stock split being made retroactive to the first of the period presented, in this case being our year. Let's do one more example where we have another interesting thing happening in the outstanding shares of common stock during the period. Here's our fourth and final example. We have a company reporting $450,000 of net income for the period. It has non-cumulative preferred stock, and dividends of $65,000 were neither declared nor paid for the year. the beginning of the year, the company had 90,000 shares outstanding, and 3 events changed them: our stock issue, our treasury stock purchase, and on December 1st, a 10% stock dividend. What would earnings per share be? Notice our numerator has changed because it's non-cumulative preferred stock and the dividends are not declared or paid, they're not subtracted. So our numerator is 450,000. Let's tackle our denominator. A lot hasn't changed so far in our computation. We have the 90,000 shares outstanding for 4 months. Because of an issue, it increases to 150 for 6 months. Because of a treasury stock purchase, it decreases to 114 for the month of November. But on December 1st, a stock dividend is issued, a 10% stock dividend. Again, the corporation receives no economic benefit from this stock dividend, but it does change the number of shares outstanding. Anytime you have no economic benefit received, you must make it retroactive to the first of the period presented. So we need to increase our common stock outstanding by 10% for all periods shown. First of all, let's do our last slare. 114,000 increased by 10%. 114,000 times 1.10 or 110% is 125.4. So that takes care of December. Let's make it retroactive now. I times the first 3 layers by 1.10, which in effect keeps the base intact and grows it by 10%. Let's go ahead and do the math. Notice I don't do that for the final layer, the 125,400, because I already grew it by the 10%. That's how I got to 125. All right, hold on. Put this on pause and do some calculations for me. 90,000 times 4 twelfths times 1.10 is 33,000. 150,000 times 6 twelfths times 1.10 is 82.5. Finish the last 2 layers in that same fashion and total the resulting column. The number that you get is 136,400. Now it's time to go ahead and calculate earnings per share. 450,000 minus 0 divided by 136,400 is $3.30. So earnings per share in this example is $3.30 per share. You've now seen the calculations of earnings per share when they have net income, and you've seen various effects of preferred stock dividends, and you've seen different ways that the number of common shares outstanding can change, specifically for stock issues, for treasury stock purchases, for stock splits, and for stock dividends. This concludes my discussion on how to calculate earnings per share. Thanks a lot for joining me.